Let's do this.
All right, ready?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Time2Shine, the podcast. Here I am. My name is Justin Marcus.
And I'm Karina.
And this is Time2Shine, the podcast. So,
What do you want to start with? What topic? We were supposed to talk.
Let's start all over again.
Oh, really?
No, because I was supposed to bring up the title, and I didn't.
Yeah, you sounded very cheapy there.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, go on.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode here on Time2Shine, the podcast. I'm Justin.
And I'm Karina.
And today we're going to talk about something really interesting. Karina, it actually this idea started from our previous episode where we were talking about showing God or Jesus in every aspect of our lives, right? So we decided, and we were talking about it and thinking we should start from the foundation, right? So what we want to be able to share with you guys today or discuss with each other is basically what we view as the foundation in the home, which is the foundation of parenthood. So this is what we're going to get into today. Why don't you get us started off with this topic? What's your first point?
So my first point was basically what the parents are, that to a great extent the children will become. So
what do you mean by all of that?
Well, we are pretty much their example during, the time that we raise our children. So whatever we do, they will follow. So we are to be the example.
Now, we're not exactly to say that, we're perfect. Like we said last time, we're not the perfect role model parents, but the objective is to try as best as we can to be as best or as good a role model for our children, because whatever they see in us is what they're, to a certain extent, going to follow. They might not be exactly, like my son might not be exactly Justin, and our daughter might not be exactly Karina, but a lot of the similar character traits they'll pick up on. Like, for example, there's a lot of times where we might be doing things and living life just normally, right? And we assume that they're not picking up on something.
They're not paying attention.
They're not paying attention.
Which they are.
Yeah, and then we're like, well, where did they learn that?
Or where did you get that from?
And then we have to kind of reflect on ourselves, because for the most part, because our kids are homeschooled, most of their interaction is with us. So if we're seeing something that seems a little off, and we kind of question, oh, where did you learn that? Or where did you pick that up from? We have to reflect on ourselves. We have to question, did they learn this from me?
Well, given that they're with us pretty much 24/7, at least with me.
Exactly. So I think like a big amount of the influence of our children and who they are is from the parents.
So,
but that doesn't just mean just because we homeschool, our kids are influenced by us. And maybe there's some of our viewers that don't homeschool and think, okay, then I'm off the hook.
Yeah, no. Children pick up wherever they are, whether it's at school, whether it's in, outdoors with other children.
Especially in the young age, because it's like everything they do, they just absorb as much information as they possibly can.
Well, their brains are like sponges, right?
Exactly. So that's why we need to be extra alert, extra cautious. If we're at home and our kids are being influenced by us, we need to pay attention. What am I doing to be a good example? Am I showing them the right ways? Even when I assume they're not watching, am I living the right ways? And this is where we want to go to the foundation of parenthood, because for many of us, we seem to think that it's only when, you push that record button, when the kids are watching and you have to show this perfect parenthood in front of the kids. But then there's certain times when maybe you don't think the kids are paying attention, or they're not watching, or maybe they're in another room, and it's like you hit turn off that record button and you kind of relax a little, and all of a sudden they're in another room, but they're hearing your conversations. They're hearing what you're saying. They're hearing what you're talking about. They hear how you're interacting, and then subconsciously it's like being programmed in their head. So they're connecting the recording part of you. Let's just use that as an example. And what I mean by that is like the part that you want everyone to see. Obviously, we're recording here, but there's portions that we don't want you to see, like the whole setup and everything like that. You guys don't know how long it takes or what goes into setting up for this podcast. So what I'm trying to explain is that they're catching both sides, and we don't think they are. So we only present or put emphasis on one when we should be putting emphasis on both.
Well, remember to the point where they were still little, we obviously were fluent in Portuguese and in English, so we would speak Portuguese to them, well, to us, so they wouldn't understand. But
yeah, I remember that. And it's getting harder and harder to keep things away from them, because when we would speak Portuguese, it was specifically for them not to know what we're talking about, or not to understand. If we needed to explain something that wasn't for their age, or try and talk about certain things that we didn't want them to know about, but now they're picking up on the Portuguese. So
our daughter is actually 9, and she's already pretty much picking up on a lot.
So it's getting harder to avoid certain things, which means that we need to be a little more assertive in making sure that what comes out, not just in our words, but also in our
actions,
demeanor,
in our actions,
is what we want the children to be able to receive.
Yeah. So that goes to seek to build your house on a rock, which Jesus is our rock. And we basically want to be able to train up our children in the way they should go. So when they're old, they will not depart from thee, right?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of young people growing up in the church with me, and like all my age and stuff like that. And for the most part, a lot of them have left the church. And we kind of question, why is it that so many young people leave the church, or leave their faith, or leave their connection with God? And then a lot of people say, okay, it's the problem is the church. Either the church is too strict, there's too many rules in the church, you're not allowed to do this, or you're not allowed to do that. But now that I have kids, I look back on it all and I'm like, well, it's not necessarily the church, because the churches are really just a reflection of the home life.
Yeah.
Like what we were talking about in our other episode. If you guys haven't tuned into that episode, I encourage you to go to our first episode and watch it. Because what we spoke about is that it all starts in the home, right? So if we're seeing kids that are leaving church at an older age, but yet they were raised in the church, and parents claim to this verse that's found in Proverbs of training up the child in the way he should go, and when he grows old, he won't depart from it. You know, as parents, we want to hold on to that because we do our part when they're young, and then it's almost like we can slack off later on because we know they had that foundation, and that foundation, it seems as though that foundation is enough. But just the foundation isn't enough to have a home. I mean, it starts with a foundation, but then you have to build the side walls, you have to build the roof, you have to do all the other steps to it. So it doesn't stop when the kids are young, and you just lay that initial foundation of getting them to know who Jesus is and the love of Jesus and things like that.
You got to remember that most of the times, we tell our children, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to go here. But there's never an explanation why.
You know why?
Because when I grew up, it's like, yeah, you're not allowed to go there. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that. But there was never that reason why. Oh, it's just because, we don't agree with that. But then why don't you agree with that? So it was very hard to understand why my friends would do certain things that I wasn't allowed to. I mean, now looking back, I obviously know why. But because we didn't have that solid...
sort of like a foundation, but
at
more
home,
the whole building, the whole structure of the home life.
We didn't have
really
that.
Built.
We didn't have that. We weren't very spiritual people. I don't remember ever doing, any devotions with my family. We would go to Sunday church, but that was pretty much it. And then, like, we would go to a Saturday church with grandma.
I was just about to say, you had a really confusing
I really
childhood
did.
because you had kind of two opposite ends and trying to juggle the two different sides and getting confused by the two different sides. What's really the foundation? Is it this or is it this? And you grew up a little confused with all of that.
As confusing as it was, it really didn't. It didn't affect me because I thought it was just an outing. Like, okay, we're going to go here because it's an outing. Like I said, there was not that solid foundation in the home. So I didn't think that, going to church or not going to church was really a big deal.
Okay, so I want to talk about this solid foundation in the home that we're bringing up. Because when we look at the Bible and it talks about that verse where build your house upon the rock.
Yes.
So that when the storms come, it won't fall apart, right? And for those who build on the sand, they're foolish because when the storms come, it's going to destroy the house. So that solid foundation or that rock, we know the Bible tells us that it's Jesus. Jesus is the rock. So we need to build our lives on Jesus, for one. That's plain, that's clear. But what is that foundation apart from Jesus? When we have Jesus as the rock, the chief cornerstone, like the Bible mentions, right? I view this solid foundation as Jesus as the chief cornerstone, the first cornerstone, the first block that's laid. Let's get to know Jesus. Let's implement Jesus in our home, in our lifestyle. And then apart from that, the other blocks that are surrounding it, I would view as parenting.
Yeah.
So the foundation of parenting is necessary to building or raising a home that is going to be conducive to something that's going to be spiritually uplifting, as well as something that's going to be a positive impact on society, as well as a positive impact on our children's upbringing. So that's why I want us to really dive deep into this discussion on parenting, because I think that's where it all begins. Like I was mentioning how a lot of my friends, they kind of blame the church. But when you look back at it, even though the parents were teaching their kids about Jesus, bringing their kids to church, the question you have to ask is, what were they doing at home? Because these kids walked away. And if the Bible is telling us that raise up a child in the way he should go, when he grows old, he won't depart from it, well, how were those parents really raising the kids? Was it just to push them to church, just to force them upon rules, and like what you were saying, not really give a reason to the purpose why they do what they do? So it almost felt like restrictions or rules or obligations all the time. And like,
yeah, but then
let's be real, for the most
part. But then what
part,
happens with parents that are training their child and then they get to an older age, and I can talk about you, because your parents, obviously they were really well, training you guys, and you guys would be going to church.
Yeah, I mean,
and then you left.
For me and you, our upbringings were very different.
Yeah.
I had the upbringing of everything was like very spiritual.
You had a solid,
and yes, my parents had a very solid foundation in raising us, in establishing their marriage, in establishing the home atmosphere, all of that. So I got one side of the picture and you got a complete opposite side of the picture. Yet, like you're saying, I kind of drifted away.
So that's why I'm saying. So we're telling our viewers, if you're being the same at church and you're being the same at home, type of thing, the saying of, you are everywhere you go, you are supposed to be, the same person. You're not supposed to be,
Here's what I think is the difference. So the difference between, and I'm not trying to compare me with someone else or judge or criticize or think I'm better than someone else. That's not it. I'm looking at the side of parenting for now. So not looking at me per se, but the view of my parents. Okay, so yes, I did step away from my faith for a period of time. Yes, I did walk away from my religious views or the upbringing that my parents brought me in as a young child. However, the difference isn't so much me, but the difference is the parenting. And that's why I go back to look at all the other kids around my age that left the church. And I question not so much just the church, but the homes. Because yes, I walked away, but because I had the proper upbringing, because there was a foundation, and that foundation was in the parenthood, that means that even though I was at that stage of rebellion, like most people call it, you go into the teenage years and you wanna try new things, you wanna experience new things, you wanna be in control of things, and you go through that little phase of rebellion. I had a strong foundation from when I was young.
Yeah.
So even though I was out there trying to experience new things and learn new things, what happened was it was very short-lived. My parents, on the other hand, they might think, oh, that was like the longest period of their life, the most like stressful and anxiety.
Which obviously was.
You know, I don't blame them because I put a lot of stress on my parents. I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. That's on me.
But you came back. So that's...
Exactly. And why did I come back? Because I could see with the strong foundation that was built in my home when I was younger, and then I go out into the world to experience things that are different than what I was accustomed to. I had something to compare it with. There's this, and then there's this that's totally opposite. But we get a lot of people that call themselves Christians, right? And they raise their kids, and they just give them rules. They say, oh, the Bible says this, so we can't do this. Or all it is about love Jesus, but then there's no urgency to have any duties implemented in your life. So you can almost just do whatever you want, right? And then what happens is that they grow up and they look at the home, they look at the world, and they don't see much of a difference. They don't see too much contrast.
They probably think, my family's messed up.
No, it's not that my family's messed up. It's they don't see too much contrast. So what happens?
That's where we get the names of like hypocrites. People that go to church are hypocrites.
Yeah, but
we get that all the time.
I don't really want to go there.
Yes,
what I'm trying to get at. I'm getting to the climax of my point here. What I'm trying to get at is they don't see much of a difference between home and the world. But the only difference that they do see is one, there's restrictions. The other one, there isn't.
Free.
There's more freedom. It appears, I'll say, it appears as though there's freedom.
Yeah.
So what are they going to be drawn to? That appearance of freedom. Why? Because they both seem the same, but one holds you back, the other one gives you liberty. So I'm going to push towards the liberty. Whereas with me, it was a complete opposite. I saw my home and then I saw the world, and they were completely different.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, they're both the same. Which one am I going to pick? I could pick and choose whichever one. That's not really what it was. With me, I was literally rebelling against home because I wanted to taste something totally different. And as soon as I tasted what was totally different, I realized in a short period of time, this wasn't for me. I don't like this. I prefer what I had in the home. Because that home had a strong foundation, and the foundation started with my parents teaching me of Jesus, my parents having Jesus in their lives, and having a strong union together, because as they were raising us, they were always on the same page.
Which is important, right?
Yeah. But we see like a lot of Christians today, or a lot of parents today, let's say Christian parents, okay? A lot of them are kind of like, they're doing the chicken dance. And what do I mean by the chicken dance? You know when you, well, I've never done it. Your family probably did it back in Portugal when you were younger. Did you guys have chickens when you were little?
Chickens,
yeah, your mom
pigs.
used to, it's old school, you do it at home, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you cut the head off. But if you're not holding on to that, I'm sorry, this sounds a little gross. But if you're not holding on to that body, guess what's going to happen? The chicken's going to start running around without a head. So we see a lot of Christian parents with that same visual. It's like chickens running around without their heads. They don't know where they're going. They don't know what they're doing.
That's a good illustration.
They're literally just running around, and they're trying to figure it all out. They're bumping and hitting their heads, and they're all over the place. And it seems like they're going nowhere.
So
now I'm going to explain what's going on with that. Because when you get these kinds of parents that are running around like chickens with their head cut off, right? And they're going no places. What ends up happening, a lot of times we hear this phrase laid out in so many different ways. I've never actually heard it in parenting, but I took this phrase and I'm applying it to parenthood because I see it playing in parenthood.
What is it?
And it is fake it till you make it.
Oh,
Remember that phrase?
fake it till you make it. Yeah.
I hear it all the time, especially in today's age where, you know what, everyone is trying to show themselves like they got things figured out. Like they know what they're doing, but really they have no clue. And they're just pretending or putting a show until they figure it out. So they're trying to hope that no one picks up on the fact that they have no clue what they're doing. And this is what's happening in the homes today, in the Christian homes. A lot of parents are raising kids, but they have no clue what they're doing because they're following the ways of the world. The way the world is raising kids, they're copying, they're imitating. And we as parents look like we don't have it figured out. So then what happens is our kids are going to grow up and they're going to see the home, they're going to see the world, and they don't seem very different. So the kids are going to say, I want more liberty. I'm going to go out into the world. And the parents are like, I raised them. I gave them the foundation. They're going to come back one day. But did you really give them the true foundation?
So that leads us to Matthew 6:33, which is seek ye first
the kingdom of God and his righteousness.
Yeah.
And then all
Just
these
one
things
of my
will be
favorite,
added
yes.
unto you, right? Obviously, this was talking about the practical necessities of life, right? Because, your food, if God takes care of the birds, how much more will he take care of you? So don't worry about your food. Don't worry about your clothing. These are the necessities of life, the actual context. But we can apply this verse too. Because if you're seeking first the kingdom of God, if you're seeking first Jesus Christ in the home, as a parent, individually, so you yourself seek God first and foremost, and I do the same thing in my life, then we're starting to build the foundation of parenthood.
Yeah.
If we think that we're going to go to church and that's going to be the foundation of our home,
Yeah.
just because I can go to church and I'm going to hear the sermon, I'm going to be able to understand the sermon. My kids aren't. So that's enough foundation for me. I can teach the kids what I learned in church. And we think that's enough foundation.
Yeah, but you can teach, but you got to put it into practice.
Exactly. So that's what
Right?
I'm saying. Seek first the kingdom of
Yeah.
God, which means it's not so much what you're learning in church, but what you're learning in your own private lives. Because parenthood isn't developed at church, it's developed in the home. So Christ also has to be grown or experienced in the home and not just at church.
Well, that's where it all comes down to the first episode that we spoke about. We gotta have a walk with God in order for us to be the example for our kids and be on the same page, right?
Yeah. So actually that walk with God, it leads me to this book here. It's The Adventist Home. We're actually going through it as a family. I actually read this book already 2 times cover to cover. It's incredible to learn the spiritual guidance or guidelines to how to live a Christian home. This is called the Adventist Home. And basically, Adventist basically means those that are looking forward to the advent of Jesus Christ, the coming of Jesus. And we as a family, we believe God is coming soon. So we want to be prepared in the home. We want our home, me, you, our children, and if the extended family can be a part of that, if we can be a positive influence to them, then praise God, that's our goal. And that's why we're doing this, to reach out to our family, to reach out to our friends, anyone we can influence. But here's what I want to get from this book. And I'm going to read a short quote here. It says, "Parents, if you fail to give your children the education that God makes it your duty to give them, both by precept and example, you must answer to your God for the results. These results will not be confined merely to your children. They will reach through generations. Just as the one thistle permits to grow in the field produces a harvest of its kind, the sins resulting from your neglect will work to ruin all who come in the sphere of their influence." So 2 things that I catch here. The first one is that God is calling us, telling us as parents that we have a duty. And that duty is to train our children in precept and example. A lot of us like to give the precepts.
Yeah.
It's easy to raise our kids in precepts. What are precepts? Pick up the Bible, read them the 10 Commandments, read them the fruits of the Spirit. All these things, these duties that, okay, you guys have to live this way.
Must-dos, yeah.
But then oh, but why do I have to do this?
Yeah.
Why is this necessary? Why can't I do that? And they're missing out on the why, right? So if you're just doing the precepts, then they feel it's almost like there's a void there, and they're not connecting the pieces. It's almost like you're trying to build a puzzle with your kids. And half of the puzzle is precepts and the other half is examples. So it's like and it's not that the precepts are all on one side and all the examples are on the other side. They're all mixed up. So if you're not doing both, then you'll never be able to find matching pieces, because you need to take the precepts, train the kids, teach them the duties of life. But also, in order to connect that to make sense in the kids' lives, we need to give the examples.
Yeah.
And how do we give examples?
So that leads us to the topics that can help us out. Well, that has helped us out. We will kind of break it down into some things that we have done that has helped us along the way, I guess.
Just a couple of things that we try and do and be a little consistent with, because there's other things that, we're not always consistent with everything.
Yeah, but these were the most ones that, that we kind of chose to.
I think it's because we see these have the most impact.
Yeah,
the most impact, and we can trigger and notice a difference whether we're implementing or if we're not implementing. We see a drastic change with our kids.
So the first one that at least that I found that was really, really big, and I know a lot of people are going to think, this is a little too much, right? Like we always get that, would be screen time. Screen time is one of the biggest things that we have changed. We don't own a TV.
Yeah, but even though we don't own a TV, we
got
to be real.
We have the iPad that we have the kids, but they are limited. We have them limited to a specific time.
So they're limited to a time.
Yes.
And that's a very narrow window.
Yeah.
But not just being limited in time, they're also limited in what they're allowed to watch.
What they're allowed to watch, yeah, because nowadays, that's just another story for another episode.
Yeah, so we have to be on top of that.
Yeah.
If we want to build a solid foundation in the home, as parents, we have to be on top of that. So it's not just allowing our kids to choose what they want, but we tell our kids, if they're in a time that's appropriate, this is what you're going to watch. What you're what you're allowed to watch. And at the same time, we're not overextending it, and it's not happening frequently. So it's almost like a treat for them.
Yeah.
Now, there's times or seasons in our life where, things get a little chaotic and we get tired with life. A lot of things are going on, and sometimes because we're not perfect, they end up in front of the screen more than the usual, more than we in our home are accustomed.
That's very rare.
What happens? What happens though?
That's very rare.
What happens with our kids though?
Well,
they get agitated.
The mood changes. Their mood. I find that their ability to focus is off.
We're constantly having to repeat ourselves over and over and over.
Their ability to focus.
And then what happens? What does that do to us? We get exhausted. We get drained out. And then because we're drained out as parents, all of a sudden now we're reverting to lashing out at them. The soft tones don't work anymore, so I have to amplify my voice, and now I'm yelling at them, or you're yelling at them. And what's that reflecting?
They get lazy.
Oh, yeah.
They get very lazy because I notice this a lot because of when I homeschool them. If, for whatever reason, they get to watch something in the morning, something, either a devotion or whatever. If it carries on a little longer, then it's like, oh, do we have to do our class, right? Or, oh, are we only going to do one book today? So right away, they just become lazy, and everything just annoys them. And I know that's because they overpass the time of screen time, because I've experienced that, multiple times. And, we're obviously learning over and over again, but that is a big thing. So
I want to bring this one example, actually, I'd say, to the parenting or parenthood in precept and example, like I was talking about, right? So we try as best as we can to cut screen time. And if they do have, it's very limited, very short, and it's controlled by us as parents.
Yeah.
But what that means is that we also have to implement the same principles
With
in our
us.
lives.
With us, yeah.
Because I've noticed it happens more often, I think, in the winter, because you feel confined inside your home when where we live, it's like 3-4 feet of snow sometimes. So we feel very confined into the home, and then you run out of things to do, run out of board games, you run out of activities or crafts or whatever it might be. You just feel like you don't have enough ideas to keep them engaged or interactive. So sometimes it resorts to they're watching something, or it might not even be that. It might be we're just so tired from the week or so tired from the day that we just feel like I just need to decompress. I just need to just sit down, and if I just stay, if it's quiet, then it's just too quiet. Let's just have something in the background.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the screen is watching me or watching you, but then because we're watching, they're going to watch something. And then all of a sudden it trickles down. And so that's what I'm saying is like what we implement in their lives, we also have to be willing as parents to implement in our lives.
Well, because we are the example.
Exactly. But what we see a lot of times is the parents will throw down the rules, but then the kids, because they're small, they don't realize, or maybe if your kids are older, they're starting to pick up on it. Well, why can't we do it? But all of a sudden you're doing it.
Yeah.
And then they see like a hypocrisy or a double standard in the home.
Yeah.
Oh, but I'm the parent. I'm the one that makes the rules. When you're out of the house, you get to do what you want, or you can make your rules when you're in your home. But this is my home, and this is how it's going to be.
I mean, to an extent, but not when at least for this, right? We really want to be able to.
Yeah, because what we're really trying to achieve is the foundation of a godly lifestyle. We want to be able to show him in everything, right? And if we want that true foundation, that foundation starts first and foremost with Jesus as the head of the home. But if Jesus is the head of the home, if we truly want him to be the head of the home, he's going to turn to you and me as the parents.
Yeah.
We have the responsibility now to train our children, but not just train our children, but also to live the examples for them so that as we're teaching them, they're seeing what it looks like. So when they're trying to build that puzzle piece of precepts, now they have some examples to match the precepts with, and they could connect all the pieces and they see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
That it's not just, Christianity isn't just about rules and regulations or do's and don'ts, but there's something beautiful that comes out of it in the end. And they get to see that beautiful picture. That's why kids do puzzles. It's not just to connect the pieces, but to see the final outcome, to see what that picture looks like. And that's our role. That's our responsibility as parents, to connect those pieces of precepts and examples, combine them together to see that end result.
So do you want to, so the second one I had here was the eating habits. So
our last episode, we actually talked about diving in. That was one of the areas where we just dove in.
Which one?
The eating habits. Because, well, it started off with diving in because we had to change our diets.
Oh, plant-based,
yeah. And that started because I was sick and my eating habits were affecting and negatively impacting my health. So I had to do a change, and because I did a change,
we all did a change.
Everyone. But
which was it a good thing,
What's interesting
right?
is that you were already kind of geared towards that because there was a short period of time before I had to change, before I realized my diet was impacting, that you were starting to make two different meals. You were making a healthier meal for you, and then everyone else was eating the regular food that we were always used to eating. And then I was like, I felt bad because you were having to every single time make two different meals.
Yeah.
Which was more work on you.
Yes, I remember.
So once I realized I have to change my diet, then I was like, okay, we're all changing our diet. That includes me, that includes you, that includes the kids, and we all eat the same food now.
We all eat the same food. So, but like the eating habits, this means not just the plant-based, but this means like no snacks between meals. That's something that we're really, really big on. So if the kids aren't allowed to snack in between meals,
that means we're not allowed to snack.
Should we be allowed?
And that was a struggle. That was a struggle.
For you. For you.
Me, yeah, because I might look small, but I'm a heavy eater. And I just constantly like to consume food all the time. And I've learned through the Bible and, the Holy Spirit talking to me that I need to be temperate in all things.
Yeah.
And food is one of those areas. So what was happening is that if I eat a meal, that should be sufficient for me until the next meal. But if all of a sudden I'm starting to eat snacks, then we can go into the whole health area.
It was more because of that,
digestion.
And not
But what ends up happening is that not so much with me, because I love all your food. I never complain about your food. You're a great cook. But with the kids, what happens is if they're eating a snack, when it comes to the next meal time,
they're not hungry.
Yeah. Or they don't want to eat this, or they start getting picky, and they're wanting to choose what they want to eat. And then who's in control at that point?
But I think that was mostly because of the whole, health, not eating between snacks. That's just something that we obviously know
I think it started with health.
It did, because we used to have
because
snacks.
That's what was right in our face. We could see it was health reasons.
Yeah.
That started it. But now that as we're growing and we're adapting to that lifestyle,
it's become
I'm seeing
easier.
it more and more of not just health related, but a part of the foundation of parenthood.
Yeah.
Because if our kids are going to be allowed to eat whenever they want, or choose whatever they want to eat whenever they want to eat, then they're the ones that are really in charge during that time. And if we want to build a foundation of parenthood, that means we have to be in control, not necessarily dictate to them, but be the ones in control of every situation all the time.
Goes back to being the example, right? That's what we're trying to...
Exactly. So even in this area, we can't have the double standard where they're not allowed to eat snacks, but all of a sudden daddy's on the couch munching on chips or whatever it is, or...
Which sometimes you kind of... lack off.
Yeah, well, guess what? We're all a work in progress,
I know,
right? We're not perfect, but what I'm seeing is a progression, and that's what's important. A progression with our kids, a progression in your life, in my life. And if we're seeing progress, then that's a good sign.
So do you want me to bring up the next?
Sure.
So the next key that has helped us is pretty much chores. And I know that's, that's part of the homeschool as well, when the kids get to do the chores, but they get to help around the house. So that keeps their minds, going and active. And it also helps them to build their character, because I can speak about myself. Growing up, my mother was someone that would always do everything for us. I think we spoke about this before, didn't we?
Yep.
I love my mother, and she's the type of person that will do anything, obviously, for us. But it didn't really help us in the long run, because she would just want to do everything herself. And then, obviously she wanted us to be in school and get good grades. But then as time, progressed, now you're going to do this. But I never did this before, so how do I even do that? That was what I experienced in the home.
I'm going to be honest. When I was in the process of trying to find the right companion for me, that was one of the top things on the list. Apart from spiritual life, it's a homemaker. Do you have the ability to be a homemaker?
I didn't. I didn't. And I used to hate cooking. I used to hate cleaning. I used to hate laundry.
But you were an amazing cook from the start.
Well, I don't know if
your mom is a really good cook.
She is.
And you got that from her. But
I never used to like it until I actually had to.
Because I showed so much appreciation for your food.
No.
Just because I really enjoy food.
So, like I was saying, it really affected me, because my mom started giving us chores, right? So one of the chores was ironing clothes. And she used to fold the clothes, right? And then she'd say, okay, now you have to iron the clothes. So obviously she'd get everything set up for me.
Wash the clothes and then you...
No, because at the time we didn't have a dryer. We would dry the clothes outside. So once they were dried, she'd bring them and fold them, and I would just have to kind of iron them. That's
okay.
So I used to hate that. I used to hate that. And sometimes I used to kind of like, I do 1 or 2 pieces and then I kind of just stack up, other ones. So she kind of think they were actually iron and they weren't, to the point where she actually found out. Yeah, I used to do that. But what's really, really crazy is that I actually married someone that likes to iron clothes.
So here's the crazy thing. I find it very
steamy,
very relaxing. I actually prefer ironing than steaming.
No.
But I actually really enjoy ironing. And when I take my clothes and I iron it, and it comes out nice and straight, it just feels like something so accomplished.
I love you for that because I hate doing that.
And you know what? I love you because you cook, and I just can't cook for my life.
Okay.
But here's where we want to get to, all right? We're just going on a little rant here, but that's okay. Here's what we want to get to, all right? So the home chores with the kids, going back to the precepts and examples.
Yeah.
We give them the examples. You guys got to do this, do this, do this, do this, make your bed, whatever their chores are, right? That engages them.
Exactly.
It engages them, right? But at the same time, if we're just telling them to do these things, and we know growing up we hated certain things. You never liked cleaning. So you're going to sit around and you're not going to clean, but you're telling them to make their bed, then they're going to dread it also.
No, because with our kids, our daughter actually says, "Mommy, but you never liked doing this when you were young. Why? I actually love doing it." And I just look at her and I'm like, "Yes." Right? Cuz she actually enjoys
I'm going to actually
things.
share something that changed you.
Okay.
All right, and it's something
don't
from
embarrass me.
It's not. I'm not gonna embarrass you.
Okay, go on.
I love you, but I think it works well here, because you were raised in that way that you didn't build the skill. Let's say.
Yeah.
You did not that your mom or your parents didn't want you to develop it.
They wanted to do it themselves, pretty much.
Yeah. So she had her way of doing it, and she never liked it being done a different way, because she liked to being organized.
Until today,
and
she's like that.
It has to be organized in her way, and I think she relates well with me when she got to know me, because I was very organized too, to the point where, remember my shirt, it was all color coordinated. My pants, everything was color coordinated in my closet, and you're like, whoa, this guy's a little too much. But your mom fell in love with that because she can relate to that.
Yeah.
And that was how I was raised. I was raised to be very organized.
And I'd like to thank your mother for that.
There you go. See? She thanks you for that. Anyways, here's what I think the benefit is. When our kids say, "Oh, mommy, but you never liked doing it when you were little. Why do I have to do it now?" Let's take us when we got married. I was always accustomed to making my bed after I got up, before I go to school or before I go to work. So my room had to be organized.
Yes.
And when we got married, I would wake up, I'd have to go to work early, but you'd still be at home. So obviously you're in bed sleeping. I come home the first couple of times and I'm like, did you just get out of bed? Because the bed looks like a mess. Was it like this the whole day?
You're making me look bad.
No, it's not to make you look bad. It's just, you're practicing what you were living.
Yeah.
You didn't know any different than what you were accustomed to, right? So I started making the bed for a short period of time. And whatever that did to you, instead of just criticizing you all the time, I just started doing it.
Yeah.
And you started feeling good about that, right? And then you started feeling like, okay, if he's doing it and he can do it and he's not complaining, then why can't I? It's not like I'm having someone tell me, you have to do it this way, you have to put this pillow like this or that pillow like that, or, fold the sheets this way. I wasn't doing that, right? I wasn't dictating you how to make the bed. You
were pretty much being an example.
Being an example. So I was making the bed.
Follow along.
Exactly. But I was kind of being that example in a loving way.
Yes.
I could have done it in a way that was going to really make you feel even worse, or really make you hate making the bed even more and never make the bed. So
your point is that's why we have to be with our
After
kids.
that, I never had to make the bed anymore. Not that I don't make the bed, but it was never an issue anymore.
And that's how it should be with our kids.
Exactly. So that's the point I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
If our kids are complaining that, oh, you never liked doing this when you were little, or whatever it is, if we just start living those life habits as an example, and we do it cheerfully,
it'll become a joy.
Not grudgingly, not always complaining. Why do I have to pick up after you? Why do I have to do this? Why is this always out of place? Always complaining while doing the duties of life. they're going to pick up on those complaints more than the the benefits of the duties or having the house orderly or organized. We want them to pick up on the positive. So the fact that the house is organized or that there's order around the home, we want them to pick up on those things. So how do we do that? Stop complaining while we're doing those things.
Well, see, that's where my mom, like I said, she was brought up in a way that she obviously, was the head in that department. She had to have everything, organized in her way, that if she was to allow us to do it, it wouldn't look the same, or it would take longer. And nowadays, it's a lot of parents are like that. I'd just rather do it on my own and get it done with, and that's it. And in the beginning, I used to be like that. Like, remember, I was like that in the beginning. And then I started thinking, like, I'm following again what my mother
you know why
brought me up.
You know why, though? Because in today's culture and society, things are a little different. You have women going to work and men going to work. There's this whole equality thing. But back then, and I think things should be more the way they are biblically, that the wife is the homemaker, the husband is the provider,
absolutely
the financial provider. But what's happening is that because women are going to work, then they come home, the man, the husband is at home resting, as he should, if he works hard. But then she should feel the necessity to rest too if she's outside working. But guess what? Someone has to cook, someone has to clean, someone has to do those things. So when she starts doing it, she feels like she's working again. Right? She feels like she's working. But the homemaking life, it shouldn't be viewed as work.
No.
And that, I think, is what the problem with parenthood. That's what's the problem in parenthood, is that we view homemaking as work when it's not work. Even though it has work-like attributes, it shouldn't be viewed as work, because then the life in the home feels like a burden all the time.
Feels like a burden, and
it feels
drags
on, a heavy weight on your shoulders. Yeah. Whereas when we're in our home, it should be peaceful. It should feel like the burden is alleviated off of your shoulders.
It actually says on that book, it should be the most attractive place.
Yeah, it should be like the most attractive place you want to be. And it should feel like, all the weight is taken off of you.
Yeah.
So how does this look? Like, for the most part, you always do the dishes.
Well, sometimes I get her to do it as well, because she loves to do dishes.
Okay. But let's say one day, all of a sudden, I just go to the kitchen sink and I start doing the dishes.
Nothing wrong with that.
I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with it. Actually, on the opposite, when you notice I'm doing that, you have like the biggest smile on your face, or sometimes you even just run to me and jump on me because you're just so excited.
It should be something that we should be able to do all together.
It alleviated the pressure off of you, so now it doesn't feel like work. It feels like we're doing
as
life
a team,
together.
Yeah, working together as a team.
Exactly, we're doing life together. We're not working. We're just doing life together. This is part of life.
Let's just get it done, because
exactly, and we're building that foundation of parenthood, right?
And our children see that, right?
So they see that mommy's doing her part, daddy's doing his part. Like, you have your specific roles. I have my specific. You cook. I take out the trash.
But that doesn't mean that. That doesn't mean that vice versa. Yeah, exactly.
So if there's times where I'm gonna do the dishes, because I'm not there yet with cooking, but there's times I'll do the dishes, and they see that, okay, daddy's doing something that he doesn't regularly do all the time, but he's willing to do that. So there's in their view, it's not his responsibility, her responsibility, this is my job, this is your job, or I'm not going to do this because it's not my part of my responsibility. You know what I mean? It's everyone's going to be involved. Everyone's going to contribute where there's a necessity.
So this also falls into what we were talking about, which is in Galatians 5:22. Do you want to read that? So Galatians 5:22.
Wow, I opened right to it.
You did?
5 verse 22. Okay, so the Bible says here, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. So obviously here's the list of the fruit of the Spirit.
The fruits of the Spirit that we should be able to apply every day in our home.
So here's what goes on with the fruit of the Spirit. This is basically our lifestyle example.
Yeah.
Right? So as parents, we always try and teach our kids when they were really young. That was one of the first things we try and teach them, the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
And then along with the 10 Commandments, teach them the fruits of the Spirit, because this is going to bring out the God-like, the Christian-like character traits in their lives. So we want them to be good boys and girls, Christian boys and girls that love Jesus. So let's teach them the fruits of the Spirit so their personality, their character can reflect God. But what that means is that we also need to implement those same character traits in our lives. So when it says gentle, yes, me and you need to be gentle to each other,
Yeah.
but also gentle to our children.
To our kids, yeah.
So we need to, in order to build this foundation of parenthood, if I'm going to be gentle with my kids, and I don't want to be running around like a chicken with its head cut off, or faking it till I make it, I have to be well aware of the home life. Very engaged and involved in the home life. What does that mean? That means that I'm aware of what triggers my kids. I'm aware of what triggers you. And I do everything possible to avoid those triggers. Right? So basically, I'll just use an example. Nothing related to us as our home life, but just an example here. I'm tall, you're short. Right? So let's say when I'm taking a shower, I like having the shower thing hooked. But you like holding it to just wash your body. It's more convenient for you. I know that if I leave it hooked, because you're short, you can't reach. Right?
Okay, go on.
Just using it as an example,
I don't know where you're
right?
going with this, but
So if I'm always leaving it at the top, and I know it's going to be a bother to you to have to try and reach it, and it's difficult, why don't I just, when I'm done, leave it down so that it's easy for you to access? I'm avoiding a trigger.
Yeah.
Right? And we can do this with every individual in our home if we know and understand every individual in our home, which means we need to spend time with each other.
Yeah.
Because if I'm going to avoid a trigger, that means you're not going to come out irritated. You're not going to come out frustrated, annoyed,
yeah.
Whatever it is. I'm assisting you in having a positive experience, having a positive atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I can be a blessing to you. And when you do the same things, you can be a blessing to me. We can be a blessing to children. The children can be a blessing in the home, and vice versa. And that blessing that begins in our home, as it's developing in our home, it's going to start spilling out into our community.
Yeah. So
the involvements with our exterior family, our friends at church, at work, wherever it is, those blessings will start manifesting themselves in public.
So it was that quote that I brought up and you liked it. It was put more in the roots in the home so they can spread, something like that. You remember that quote? Put more into your home, the roots of your home.
Yeah, so basically it's like saying that. Invest more in the roots of the home than in the plants out in the world. Which basically, we're probably botching that quote anyways, but whatever. I'll just give the gist of it all. Yeah. It's like, invest more effort in what's taking place in the home. Water the roots in the home so that the plant actually grows properly. Because if all you're focused on is just the outlook of the plant and you're not properly nourishing it and you're just focusing on the surface, what comes out is all just surface. And there's no real genuinity or genuineness. I don't know the word, but you guys understand what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. So
really we want genuine connections, genuine interactions, genuine character traits coming out, and we want to be able to interact with genuine people.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, let's be real, out in this world, we're talking or dealing with a whole bunch of fakes. You look at Facebook or other social media platforms, and all you see is these people posting images of this artificial perfect family life, or this artificial professional chef at home. And you have the ability to make these perfect meals every single day. And we know it's not real. We know for the most part what's being portrayed out on Facebook or wherever else is all fake. We try and
fake it till you make it.
Exactly. Fake it till we want others to see the surface.
Wow.
But we never want them to know the genuine, the truth that's happening in the home. And that's not Christian. That's not God-like. Because God is concerned with the heart, not the external. So he's concerned with the deeper issues, the what's real, the roots. So he's going to focus on the home. And he wants the reality of the home to be manifest.
Yeah.
So he really wants us, whatever people are seeing outside is what should be inside in the home.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have to feel like we have to pretend outside.
That pressure that we feel with society of trying to be perfect when nobody's perfect.
I think it's also trying to compete
perfect
too.
Person was God.
I think it's also trying to compete because
Yeah,
this one looks like they went on a beautiful vacation and they had so much fun. We don't know how many arguments they had while they were on their vacation. Or that one looks like they have the perfect method of homeschooling. So I got to show that, I'm at par with them or else they're going to think my kids are dumb or something, right?
Yeah.
This need to feel like I need to compete. The Bible doesn't say seek first the competitors or the ones that are achieving the greatest at certain things. No, it says seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. We need to look to God to be our example, to kind of lead us in our home. And when we do that, then we're not so much focused on the externals or the surface because he got to the root. So we can go out there and be true and real. How I am here is the same person I'm going to be out there.
Who shouldn't be worried about what people are going to think or say or, at the end of the day, because if we know that this is what we believe and we have a strong foundation, then that's what matters. Because at the end of the day, we're here to please God. We're not here to please anybody else.
Yeah.
So
we're getting close to the end, but I want to add something. Actually, it was yesterday. I was on my way to work and I was listening to a song and it's called God Causes All Things to Grow.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful song from Steve Green. And it's one of the more old school songs. And I like the old school songs because they're not so upbeat. They're not so worldly, mingled with the worldly music. It's more reverent and more reserved. So I was just listening and reflecting on that song. And it got me to think that if I want the foundation of our parenthood to be strong, and I know that Jesus is the chief cornerstone in this home. So I need to reflect him. If I want that foundation between me and you to be strong, and then that foundation of us to be strong, a strong impact on our kids, then I need to also realize that it's only God that's going to cause these things to grow in my life. I can't check all the boxes and expect the results to be perfect. If I'm doing it on my own, perfection isn't going to come in the home.
No.
But when I have God at the center of it all, and I recognize even though I make mistakes at times, and this is why we're sharing with you guys some of the, we're not perfect. Sometimes we make mistakes. We're still going through those trying situations with our kids of trying to figure it all out. But what I'm saying is that when we realize that God is the rock, the first and foremost in our home, then he's going to give us that ability to grow as parents, as spouses, as a family. All of us together will be able to grow because he's the one that causes all things to grow. So I can't try and do it on my own, because when I try and do it on my own, I'm going to be dictating. I'm going to be forcing. I'm going to be doing things in a way that's not pleasing. And no one's going to want to follow after my example. So if I want to raise up a child in the way he should go, that when he grows old, he won't depart from it, first, I need to accept the fact that I'm not going to change my kids. I'm not going to make them who I want them to be. But I need to submit my life to God first, and then accept God's impact or influence on my life to make me change. And that example is going to impact my child's life to make them want to change too.
Yeah.
And we're all doing it in the words of love, in the actions of love. And when that happens, then the Bible says, if they depart, or when they grow old, they will not depart. So basically that just means that, they're going to want to stay.
Yeah.
They're going to want to stay because the love is there.
So my closing thoughts that I had here was, as parents, we should appreciate this high calling that God has given us. So appreciate the here and now. I guess that would be my closing thought. I don't know what you want to add, anything else, because our time is cutting short.
Yeah, here and now basically means that, our kids aren't going to stay young forever, and we're not going to stay young forever.
Unfortunately.
Life is lived here and now.
Yeah.
And we need to take advantage of here and now, because this is where we get to know each other, here and now. To be able to develop all those things we were talking about, we need to know each other. So the here and now is the most important. Be engaged, be focused, and enjoy the moments while you have them, because we never know when those moments will slip or disappear from us. So hope you guys enjoyed this talk, this discussion. Until next time. It's time to shine.
It's time to shine. Bye for now.
Take care.